Connor. Yes, that will be your name.
Ratonagaton, or Connor Kenway, is a divisive protagonist to say the least. Back when Assassin's Creed 3 was first released back in 2012, Ubisoft expected Connor to be the franchise's new flag bearer, taking Ezio's torch. Unfortunately, things didn't really go the way they'd planned. AC3 received mixed reviews, with most people not enjoying Connor. People complained that he was too stoic, lacked a sense of humor, and that despite his father Haytham Kenway schooling him time and time again, Connor still killed him and didn't seem to learn his lesson. Despite learning that George Washington had burned down his village all those years ago instead of Charles Lee, Connor ended up killing Charles Lee anyways. However, I'm here to bring all of this talk about Connor being a bad character to rest. I've gone on record to say that AC3 is a hugely underrated game in the series, and Connor in turn is a very underrated character in my opinion. So today, I'm going to discuss why I think Connor Kenway is underrated. First, let's address the stoic and non-humorous personality that Connor suffers from throughout the game. I've heard people complaining for years and years that Connor just wasn't enough like Ezio, that Connor had no excuse to be so depressed all the time, as Ezio's family was killed right in front of him just like Connor's mother was. However, Connor's story is different than Ezio's. You've got to understand that if every main character in this series acted like Ezio, then the fans would get bored of it quick. It's important that the protagonists aren't all the same. Connor is very different compared to Ezio because of both the age that he saw his mother die and the environment that he was raised in. Connor isn't given a lot of reasons to be happy. I mean, he's raised in a warrior culture that encourages vengeance and no forgiveness. That doesn't necessarily encourage people to get over their negative emotions in a productive way. So after he sees his mother die when he's really young, he's then constantly expected to train to exact revenge. He doesn't go through therapy in any form, and he's not encouraged to talk with anybody about how the whole ordeal made him feel. And on top of that, Connor is a Native American, and in those times, Native Americans, for lack of a better word, were just shit on constantly. So why would Connor have much reason to be happy? How could he be like Ezio? Ezio was raised in luxury, and he was a confident ladies' man. He wasn't raised in a warrior culture like Connor was, and most importantly, he was much older than Connor was when his family died. Sure, Ezio also tried to exact revenge, and he succeeded, but he'd already developed a healthy personality by that point, and he just needed a few tweaks to perfect himself. Connor never got the kind of rich freedom of expression that Ezio got growing up, and therefore he didn't know how to express himself in a way that was appealing to society. So why should Connor be happy like Ezio? He saw his mother burn and wasn't able to process it in a healthy way, and now he lives in a world where everybody just hates him and his people. And as for his childish worldviews, well, simply put, he actually did recognize the logic in Haytham's words in my opinion. Haytham regularly during the game points out the flaws that the assassin philosophy has in hopes of convincing his son to join the Templars. Connor stubbornly rejected Haytham at all turns. However, I don't think Connor rejected his logic because he truly believed that everything he said was a lie. I think he rejected it because he wanted something, anything in his life to work out the way he planned it. Achilles raised him on the assassin philosophy. So many things in Connor's life just don't go the way he hoped they would. His mother dying, his village burning, and how all of his actions just seem to negatively impact colonial America. His mistakes inadvertently caused the revolution to begin. By disturbing Templar control, the stability of America slowly decreased. So Connor, as a defense mechanism for his guilt, stubbornly refused to accept the responsibility of his actions. Not to mention, everyone on the side of the revolutionaries wanted the dream of the United States to be a dream come true. The whole point of America was for there to be no monarchy, no dictatorship, a country where citizens were free to make more choices and elect their own leaders. Connor fights on the side of the revolution, and he wants the US to be what George Washington and the other founding fathers want it to be. He wants to believe his people will be better off in such a country. But Haytham correctly points out that the founding fathers are greedy old men who make decisions to benefit themselves behind closed doors.
It seems your tongue has tasted sour grapes. The people have made their choice, and it was Washington.
People chose nothing. It was done by a group of privileged cowards seeking only to enrich themselves. They convened in private and made a decision that would benefit them. Oh, they might have dressed it up with pretty words. That does not make it true. The only difference, Connor, the only difference between myself and those you aid is that I do not feign affection.
Haytham says that there won't really be freedom, but only the illusion of it. But Connor refuses to side with Haytham because he needs the United States to work out. He needs something in his life to go as he planned it. So he goes into denial about the flaws in America, and he chooses to fight for his dream, even if it is unrealistic. And so finally we have to discuss his obsession with killing Charles Lee. This has almost become a meme of sorts. Connor incorrectly believes his entire life that Charles Lee burned down his village after he knocked him unconscious, and therefore he killed his mother. So he becomes an assassin to get revenge on Charles Lee. However, Haytham later points out that George Washington, the man whom Connor had trusted for years, was the one that was truly responsible for that.
And what's this?
Private
Oh,
correspondence.
of course it is. Would you like to know what it says, Connor? It seems your good friend here has just ordered an attack on your village. Although attack might be putting it mildly. Well, tell him, Commander.
We've been receiving reports of Allied natives working with the British. I've asked my men to put a stop to it.
By burning their villages and salting the land, by calling for their extermination, according to this letter. Not the first time, either. Tell them what you did 14 years ago.
That was another time. The 7 Years' War.
And so now you see what happens to this great man when under duress. He makes excuses, displaces blame, does a great many things, in fact, except take responsibility.
Enough!
But despite that, he still goes off to deal with Charles Lee. And many people would call that obsession, and they're kinda right, but also wrong. You see, Connor is obsessed, but he's obsessed for a good reason. Imagine you spend your entire life believing a man destroyed you. You study his actions and hope to see him die one day, preferably by your hand. And then after 20 or so years, you learn that he wasn't responsible at all. What would you do? Well, what Connor does is pursue Charles Lee, because after spending years and years believing him to be responsible, he goes into denial and he refuses to accept the truth. Not to mention, Charles Lee is a bad person.
I could snap your neck, you know. A little more pressure, and pop. The sad little flame of your life extinguished.
This was pretty much the only thing that Haytham was wrong about. Haytham had such high hopes for Charles Lee, but he couldn't see Charles for the man he truly was. Charles Lee was always such a kiss-ass around Haytham that he couldn't see Charles for the bad person he was. So Connor, not being able to take his anger out on George Washington, due to his necessity in the revolution, takes it out on Charles due to his legitimate claims that Charles Lee is a bad person, combined with his own personal denial. So in short, Connor Kenway was a great main character, and was a very relatable person in my opinion. He was stoic because he couldn't process his negative emotions in a healthy way. He was childlike in his worldview because he just wanted something in his life to work out, even if it was unrealistic. He wanted to stay optimistic that the world was a good place, even if all the evidence suggested otherwise. And he killed the wrong person, but only because he'd spent 20 years pursuing him and didn't want to feel like he'd been wasting his life. So in my opinion, Connor Kenway was an underrated character, and if you decide to play Assassin's Creed 3 again, I hope you keep what I have had to say in mind.